If you are a woman over 35 and results have started to stall, or maybe you've started this new year with big intentions and you've not seen that response to the changes that you've made as quickly as you may have done before, this week I'm going to be talking about what shifting up the approach over the age of 35 actually looks like. Ladies, welcome back to the Nicola Graham Podcast. And if you've listened to previous episodes, you've been listening for a while, and you will have heard me talk about, we hit this certain age, let's call it 35, where we do need to think about doing things a little differently to get the desired outcome. What worked for us in our 20s, we know it's no longer working, but we just don't know how to do things any differently. And so our default tells us to just try harder. This week, I'm going to talk about what changing up your approach actually looks like in real time. I've realised that I've not maybe gone into this level of detail, and I think it'll be super useful because it's the 14th of January. We're 2 weeks in. Statistically, this is the moment in time, this week and next, is the moment in time when most New Year goals, good intentions, that motivation, energy, it starts to dip. This is on paper, by the way. Personally, I'm starting to feel mine is building a little momentum, which is very exciting. But you will know if you follow me on social media and if you listen to the podcast, I started this year very, very slowly, very intentionally. There is no big new year, new me clear out where I'm concerned. It's week one, get back to some sense of normality. Let's allow ourselves to ease back into the routine. And then we build on from there. And like one of the exercises that I do with my clients as part of our check-ins, we review what is working and what are we struggling with. And I would urge you all to do this at the end of each week, or at some point, just put a reminder in your calendar to just reflect, okay, what is working for me this week? Where am I still struggling? And once we can identify that struggle, then we can map out, and that's how we build week on week. I'll start with my unfiltered. I've got 2 unfiltered this week. First of all, this has just arrived before I came on to record the podcast, so I thought I'm just going to share this and see if anybody else has bought into the marketing, because I think it might be, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see I can't open it. Well, this is a good start. It's one of those facial brushes, lymphatic drainage. I can't open it. Right, I can't open it to show you. I don't want to break a nail. I've just had it out of the box. Maybe you can see it on the camera. Maybe you've seen it on... This seems to be all over my Instagram at the moment, but that'll just be my algorithm. So some of you might not have a clue what I'm going on about. But you know those like jade, gua sha, I think it's called gua sha stones. So I've got one of those. Love it. But then I'm seeing these facial brushes now. I buy these things. Do I use them routinely? No, I do not. But that is one of my resolutions this year, is to take better care to stimulating a bit of collagen, lymphatic drainage, all of the things on the face. I'm trying to, as you know, age gracefully. I like that glowy look. So we're going to see how this goes. There's my first unfiltered. If you've also bought one of these, let me know what you think. And if you've got no clue what I'm on about, have a little look on YouTube. I shall keep you posted on my social media whether or not this is any good. I've just had a quick go, so I have had it out of the box. I had a quick go before I come on to record, and it felt very weird. I thought you got 2 in the box, to be honest. So the thing that I've seen on Instagram, the woman was using like the 2 together, and I've seen it repeatedly. First time I saw it, I was like, oh, that's a bit odd. And then now I keep seeing it, and I'm like, okay, inexpensive, less than £10, but I only got 1. And I thought I needed 2, so we'll see. The other unfiltered, which will be more in line with maybe what some of you might also struggle with. So it was a share from a client this week, and I thought I'm going to share this on the podcast because I may have touched on this before, but it continues to be a struggle. And I am talking about, if this is a struggle with the women that I am working with who are invested in their health, fitness, well-being journey already, they're already doing the workouts, they're already taking care of their nutrition, and they are still struggling with the peer pressure and the outside noise and the identity side of things, then I can only imagine how much of a struggle it must be to those women who are still lacking a bit of direction, who have no structure, who are not working with a coach and don't have that level of support and accountability. So this come up in 2 separate check-ins this week. So I always ask the question, like, what has been your struggle in the last 7 days? if you could choose one thing, where do you feel like you've really had to dig your heels in? And on 2 separate check-ins, I got the response that the struggle has actually been peer pressure and saying no to other people when they're offering chocolate and wine and biscuits and everything else. And so on one of my conversations with a client this week, she said, well, actually, it was a family setting and my kids felt it was also polite to take what was being offered. So I went along because we didn't want to upset the family member. And I'm listening to this, and I said back to it, and I want you to listen to this, ladies, because I know not a lot of you listening, you are also mums. And we're so keen to break this cycle for our kids, aren't we, of whether it's yo-yo dieting or poor self-esteem. We want different for our kids, and we're trying our best to build ourselves up because we want to show them what strong, fit, healthy mummy looks like. But we've also got this constant battle in our minds of we are also in this life for the first time. So we're learning on the job. So a lot of the things that we know we want to do differently, we can only put that into practice in hindsight. We need to experience it first ourselves. Anyway, this client had said to me, next time I'm around these members of the family, I am going to stick my heels in because I didn't feel good afterwards. I ate what was offered and it didn't particularly suit me or my goals. It wasn't even enjoyable. And so I will try and do better next time. But my finding, what I heard from that was that your kids also followed suit. So I was like, I mean, aside from the fact that it doesn't cater to your goals, pleasing everybody else, you are also, without even realising it, showing your kids that that's what we do. That's what, if there's a family member or there's friends or there's somebody who expects us to eat, drink, show up in a certain way, we should do that rather than upset them. And so, and this was actually a penny drop moment for me because I can apply this to my own life. I'm trying to think of an example now on the podcast. Maybe I should have thought of one before I come on, but there's lots of times for me when I say yes to meeting someone else's needs. And in that moment of saying yes, I'm saying no to myself. My kids are observing this. And so in this check-in, I had this penny drop moment, and I've shared this before, but as with everything, we can share it once, but unless we continue to remind ourselves and put it into practice, it's easy for it to default back to what it was before. So I thought I'd share that because if one of your big values is, I want to get in my best health, shape, I want this to be my year that I transform, and one of the big values is because I want my kids to see me a certain way, or I want to be able to show up for them in a certain way, then we've got to recognise that every time we say no to ourselves to please somebody else, they are watching that, and it feels like the right thing to do, but that's because what we've observed. So we've observed it growing up, and now we are allowing them to observe it without even realising it, I think, sometimes. Anyway, that was the Unfiltered this week. Some of you will completely resonate. If you do, let me know. I loved all of the messages from last week's podcast. So last week, if you've not listened, was the topic was that fat loss is more of an emotional problem than anything else. And I got so many messages off the back of last week. So many of you just felt like you related to what I was talking about. So maybe we'll pick up and carry on from that episode at some point in the future, because I think we barely scratched the surface, and it is a big talking point, and there is so much more to it. But as always, love the messages, love the feedback. Anything that resonates, continue to let me know. Okay, this week, what switching the approach actually looks like. So first of all, I want to talk about, we get to the age of 35, and this is what it tends to feel like. And I am actually in the throes of this myself this specific week. I tell you what I'm struggling with a bit this week, just fatigue, just tiredness generally seems to be, I am used to being able to bounce out the bed and have all of the energy and recover well and stay focused in my workouts, and I'm just feeling a little fuzzy this week, and it makes no sense in line with menstrual cycle. That should be next week. In my mind, I've got this planned out how it should look. But I think, again, it's the time of year, and we've gone from this busy, crazy month in December. I want to set this reminder also because a lot of us, we took the break over Christmas, so we felt as though, or we feel as though, getting back to it, all guns blazing, is the right thing to do. But we've forgotten how busy December actually was. So although it felt like a break, because it was a break from the norm, it was a break from work and the usual routines, and the kids were off school, but it was a very busy month. So we didn't actually get the downtime that we need. And then we just jump in at the deep end in January, and then we wonder why we're struggling, and maybe we are feeling a little bit more tired, or a little more stressed, or a little more depleted, or we're not recovering as well from our sessions. So this is how it can show up. When you know that things need to change, it can show up as you're doing all of the things that you were doing before, but the results have really started to slow down, or you are training the way that you were training before, but you're just not recovering the same, or you're just noticing the way I am. Fatigue is creeping in. Maybe the food noise is a little louder. Maybe the cravings have been on high alert because you've gone from eating a certain way in December to trying to do this mega low calorie, cut the sugar, do all of the things in January. But these are some of the big shifts that we see after 35. And a lot of it's in line with the shifts that our hormones are making. So stress tolerance, we know stress tolerance is limited. The things that we could abide physically, emotionally, and mentally in our 20s, like, we can no longer tolerate that level of stress anymore. Recovery is a big one. So we just don't recover as quick. I've had quite a few clients recently, and I have made the recommendation that we slow things down a little in training. I've got this band of women inside of my community who love to train. Getting to the gym is not the hard part. Like, we get after it. We want to get in. We want to lift heavy. We want to finish with something explosive. We want to train 4 days a week minimum. And we also want to recover as quickly as we did in our 20s. But that can be one of the things that you notice starts to change and slow down. Maybe after the age of 35, insulin sensitivity drops off. So again, that little piece of chocolate is no longer hitting the mark. We're now finding ourselves like we're craving more, and it's more of the sweet stuff, and it's different times in the day, and we're storing fat, around our middle, which was never a problem before. Sleep quality is also another one that falls into line with the changes in our hormones. So whether we realise it or whether we don't, I think if you I wear a Whoop band. A lot of my clients wear Whoop and Aura. Is it Aura or Aura, the ring? Anyway, if you track your sleep, you will see trends and changes in the quality of your sleep matters, ladies. It really does. We can be in the bed for 8 hours, but unless we're getting good quality sleep, we're not going to get that recharged feeling the next day. And so, as well as the hormonal changes, lifestyle load, often, like, we get to a certain age and again, we just notice that the things have started to change. Whether it is we're busier than ever before, we've got more demands on us. If your kids get to a certain age and they've got clubs every night of the week, that in itself just increases the load on you. And we find ourselves maybe taking care of our parents, and life changes. We get to a certain age, we change biologically, but lifestyle, the demands on our time, also changes. So where do we want to plug in this smarter approach that I'm always talking about? What does that actually look like? Because I know one of the biggest struggles is time. I know it is. Just finding 5 minutes in the day for yourself. And I will say this, if you are serious about transformation this year, and not just weight on the scales, if you are serious about the body confidence and the way that you show up in your relationships and the energy and the health, and you are serious about that transformation, then we've really got to look at this struggle of time and figure out where we're saying yes when we should be saying no, and where we can actually make ourselves a priority. And sometimes it means that we've got to get up a little bit earlier, or we do have to say no to some of the things that maybe that worked in the past 12 months, but going forward, I have to make time for the gym or to food prep. I need to have time being unproductive and just allow myself to relax. But we've got to get serious about it. So I'm going to go into what this approach looks like. But I've got to make that clear is that it's got to be a priority. And one of the things that I would really recommend, ladies, is give yourself this time of commitment, whether it's the next 6 weeks, next 8 weeks, next couple of months, where you actually view this process of transformation as a project. And I want you to invest your time and your energy and your thought process on really checking in with yourself. Like, how are you feeling? What, again, like I've said, what's working, maybe what's not working, and get really invested in transforming and every element of it. So first of all, first smart change to make is to move away from this mentality of burning more calories and think about recovering better. Now, this is a complete flip side. Whether or not you previously have thought about like how many calories you're burning on your watch, or whether you just base the success of your week on how many sessions you've done or how intense those sessions were, I am going to challenge you these next couple of weeks to focus more on recovery. So you're still going to get your 3 sessions minimum, 4 sessions optimal. I think the majority of women that I speak to, we can manage 3 sessions. 3 45-minute sessions of resistance training. Maybe that leaves an extra session for a Pilates, a yoga, or a little bit of something you might want to do, a class or a spin or whatever. But then everything around that, I want you to think about recovery. So not how much can I burn, not how hard can I work, not where can I get in that extra HIIT session. How can I recover smarter? I've done a whole podcast on this, ladies. I'm not sure what number episode, but I know the title was Overtraining or Under Recovering, I think, back in season 2. And I speak through the smart ways that we need to plug in to help us better recover, because your results happen during recovery. They don't happen during the workout or the day-to-day. The results come from everything else that we do around the training. So think about strength training over HIIT training. Think about having like 1 to 2 really low intensity days when you just get your steps and maybe you have a good stretch, or you have a bit of a foam roll, or you take the bath, and you really allow yourself to have these reset days. Steps are king. So I want you to think about your steps as a part of your recovery, because your general low impact movement, this is where we are getting the bang for our buck. This is where we are seeing the return on our efforts, is that if you can just increase that daily step count from where you're at currently. Let's say you've got a fat loss goal. Okay, well, we know that we want to manipulate maybe the calories, and we want to bring that number down, and we want to smarten up maybe, the quality of our sleep, but your general movement, your steps, is an easy one. So this is going to be seen as part of recovery. Sleep is a fat loss tool. It's not a luxury. I think at some point, maybe in our 20s, again, I know I refer back to our 20s a lot, but most of us, or is it just me? I'm 42 and I still feel as though I'm in my 20s fully. But then I also want to be able to bounce back like I could in my 20s. And it's like, nope, Nick, that is not going to happen. You cannot go to the gym on 4 hours sleep. I cannot go on a night out and get up the next day and bounce out the bed and go to the gym. I used to do that. I used to go on a night out and go to the gym the next day, because it's, for as long as I can remember, it's been a big part of who I am. That is not going to happen nowadays. Like, we have got to think about sleep as part of this is part of what is driving our results. And it's also impacting hormone regulation and lowering inflammation, helping with detoxification. And we need to place more value on it. Absolutely. I don't really like that expression, like we need. I never want to come across as though I am telling you what to do. But I am here to share what I know works for myself with all of my clients, from the science, from my experience. And sleep, if you've not been prioritising it prior to now, or you struggle with sleep, so you're doing all of the things, but you're waking in the night frequently, or you go into bed of a night and you cannot get to sleep, or you wake up a morning and you feel anxious upon waking, that's where we need to look first. If you were a client of mine, that would be the first thing that we would look at. It wouldn't be reducing your calories and plugging in a training program. That would be part of the setup, because that's just a given. But where I would be looking to pay most attention would be, okay, how do we improve the quality of your sleep? Why is your mind doing overtime when we go to bed of a night? There might be multiple things that are impacting that. Okay, let's look at that. Why are we waking at this hour in the middle of the night? Okay, a lot of the time it might be hormonal. We know that it's a classic symptom of perimenopause, is that night waking 2, 3 a.m. That doesn't mean there's nothing that we can do about it. In fact, aside from, or I should say more efficiently than HRT, is lifestyle factors when it comes to managing shifting hormones. And that's not to disregard anything else, but I'm not here to talk about that. But the lifestyle factors, the nuances, the little blind spots, this is where we need to pay attention, because if I'm going to work with you and we're going to achieve the transformation of your dreams, then we need to make sure that we have got like the foundations laid. And there's no point me saying to you, you're going to stick to this many calories, you're going to train these sessions per week, if every time you go to bed, you are struggling to sleep. We're just not going to get that outcome. It's not going to happen. So we start with the sleep first. And then guess what? The diet's so much easier to adhere to. The training, you're getting so much more from it. You are recovering quicker. So the sleep is a big one. And the rest. So the rest is something else that we need to think about plugging in as a non-negotiable. And we're in this mindset, I think a lot of us, that rest feels lazy. Like, it feels unproductive. And I think if you are that sort of type A, or I spoke last week, we're all high functioning, but I know a lot of the women that I work with, high performing in career, in life, in like, you've just always been that way. We see rest as being unproductive. We feel really lazy. It doesn't sit well with us. I work with a lot of women who, the moment that the routine, the crazy intense routine is simmered down, that's when they actually struggle more. And I think part of that is the identity, not knowing who we are in downtime. Like, we don't know who we are when we are not showing up with our work hat on, when we're not showing up as mum, or I know that we're always in mum mode, but we find ourselves with this white space, and all of a sudden we don't know what to do with ourselves. We don't know how to manage our time, how to relax. But this is something that you will hear me speak about more this year, because it is a goal of mine also. So I'm sure that I will update on my findings. I put it to the test over Christmas, and it was definitely, for me, it was just a massive breakthrough of like, the rest. I thought I was taking rest until I actually allowed myself to take rest. Number 2, we spoke about moving from burning more calories to training smarter and really thinking about recovering better. But number 2 is shifting the mindset of shifting from eating less to eating better. This mindset for so many women is the biggest struggle. And I don't know about you all, again, the algorithm, my algorithm is I'm in this fitness space. So everything that I seem to see on social media is related to what we should be eating and my top tips for this. And it's very, very noisy. I know I mentioned this last week, but it's getting louder as the month is going on. And so it can be really confusing, because you've got me telling you to start with the high fat, high protein breakfast and think about eating better rather than eating less. And it's like, but what does that look like, Nick? So I do something with my clients. We work around a framework of baseline nutrition. So you know what baseline nutrition is, and that's it for 80% of the time. The other 20% is flexible, but you're going to stick to baseline nutrition. So whilst it's not restrictive, it's very clear on how we need to eat to get the results that we want, and to optimize our energy, and to feel at our best, and to recover well, and all of the other things. But this under eating it's actually one of the quickest ways to stall. And again, you would probably get a complete conflicting opinion on this. You've only got to open up social media and you will have one camp telling you that we need to eat better, and you'll have another camp saying it is just simply calories in versus calories out. And yes, whilst we need to be in a calorie deficit to drive fat loss, we all know that. We get to a certain age and we look at these other factors, recovering, sleeping better, being able to get the most out of our training, thinking about our mental clarity and our mental health and how nutrition impacts that. And then it's like, okay, this is where I need to move away from just simple low calorie, and I need to think about, what does my body need to thrive? So that looks like, ladies, protein at every meal. Non-negotiable. Honestly, we can make excuses for this until the cows come home. It will continue to be a struggle until it's not. And I'm not saying I get protein at every meal, every single day. Well, I do. Do I get enough at every meal, every single day? No. It's always a work in progress, because we'll always find ourselves from time to time needing something quick and on the go. And one thing I say to the clients that I work with is the reason that it can feel hard to get your protein in is because it's often not the convenience food. So it is where we've got to plan in advance, and it's not always the quick on the go option. But protein at every meal for 80% of the time has got to be a non-negotiable. This is what eating better, not less, looks like. Front loading your nutrition. So eating more earlier in the day. Now this goes against social norms, and it might go against the previous version of yourself, whereby we eat more in our evening meal because we're eating with the kids and we're eating with our partners, and maybe our partner's cooking, whatever it might be. And so we spend all day trying to be good, because we know that we've got this big feast in the evening and we want to be able to enjoy it all. We want the big carb heavy dinner. So we spend our entire day trying to be good. But what happens is we get to a point in the day, and it's usually about 4 or 5 o'clock. So it's just before. It's like we've made it to that point, but then we've hit a massive brick wall, and we need sugar. We need the kids' leftovers. We need a piece of toast. We need something. And there's no rationale behind it, and we can't stop ourselves. It's like we've hit that point of all discipline has gone out the window, and we just need that sugar fix or the carbs or whatever it might show up like for you. And so the counterproductive part of this is we've spent all day trying to be good. So we didn't really enjoy the day as much as we could have. We weren't as energized as we could have been because we were trying to be really good all day. And then we get to the evening meal, and again, we don't enjoy that as much as maybe we could have, because we feel as though, well, we've just blew that because I've just ate the kids' leftovers before I even got to the meal that I've been saving myself for all day. So mindset shift on this would be to front load your calories. Now, I'm not talking about overeating early on in the day, but I am talking about a decent, high protein, moderately high fat breakfast. The reason that we start with protein and high fat is it reduces that spike in blood sugar. So we get this nice, steady, elevated energy. And I mean, that can regulate us for the entire day. So rather than starting with the piece of toast, the pastry, something that gives us this nice big spike and we feel like, woohoo, ready to go. But then we know off the other side of that spike, we get the crash. So we tend to find ourselves on that cycle all day. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm sort of like doing a bit of a roller coaster where we go up, blood sugar goes up, but then it drops and it crashes and we crave more of the same. So then we eat more of the same and we get the spike again, and then we're back down. If you start with protein and high fat, you just get this nice, steady, elevated rise in blood sugar. So we don't get that big boost and big hit initially, but we find ourselves better regulated, satiated for longer. Way more probable that we are then going to stick to our good intentions at lunch because we've avoided this whole roller coaster scenario in the morning. And so then again, at lunch, we want to make sure we're hitting that 30 to 50 grams of protein. We make sure we get some volume in the form of berries or salad or veggies or some form of micronutrients. They're the foods that we want to focus on. And again, depending on whether you've trained in the morning or not, we're going to be intentional about adding fat or adding carbohydrates. And then we eat in a way that feels good in the evening rather than it needing to be this grand occasion. It's the one meal that we're going to allow ourselves to eat a little bit more. And we get to the evening and we're not ravenous. We've actually flipped things on its head. So eating well of a morning, big one. That's been a game changer for me. And even plugging something in about 4 or 5 o'clock. So plan in. If you know that your working day doesn't finish till maybe 6:30 and you're not eating dinner till maybe 7, put something in at 4 o'clock. Instead of trying to be good, put something in intentional. Cottage cheese on rice cakes, piece of fruit, some meat left over from last night. I've spoken to my clients this week about how easy it is to just eat meat as a snack. Overcook the meat with dinner. Do the full cooked chicken, do the piece of beef, whatever it is, and have some meat left over in the fridge for snacks. And be willing to be the odd one out who is snacking on meat when everybody else is snacking on a bar of something. We will get looked at, ladies, like we've lost the plot or we're a bit strange. What really is strange is going to the cafe and buying a cookie like we're 10 years old, or buying a Mars bar, or needing a sugar fix so desperately, rather than planning for ourselves and having something high protein to take the edge off. Then when we've plugged something in around that 4-5 o'clock, then when we get to the evening meal, we're just not as ravenous. So we're able to manage our portion size better without feeling deprived, because we genuinely just feel satiated. This, for all of the women listening, and I'll say this to my clients, if I could give one thing to women, it would be this feeling of feeling satiated. Because a lot of the women that I speak to, the struggle is you are thinking about food all of the time, whether you realise it or not. So we're thinking about the right food to eat. We're thinking about the right decision to make. We're thinking about, we're hungry but we're trying to be good. Or flip side of that, we've just overate, or we've just ate the food that we promised ourselves that we were trying not to eat. And so without realising it, we are thinking about food all day. When you are eating in a way that allows you to feel satiated, you're not thinking about food. I cannot tell you how liberating and freeing this is to eat at regular meal times, eat in accordance to the plan, and then that's it. Like, just go about your day. No thinking about food in between the meals. Fewer, all or nothing, I would say. When we talk about eating smarter and not necessarily just less, I think we've got to think about having fewer moments of all or nothing. Again, big struggle, I know, is we open the packet of biscuits, just to use as an example, and before you know it, we've eaten the entire pack. Or the flip side of that is we are being really good, in inverted commas, which is very all or nothing. We think it's being good, we're kidding ourselves. We are really just trying to be as restrictive as we can to accelerate results. We know it's probably going to bite us on the bum, but we're just going to try it for one last time and hope that it sticks. It's not going to work, ladies. All or nothing does not work, point blank. And then alcohol awareness. This has got to be factored into eating better. I know it's not eating, it's drinking, but the alcohol, I'm not saying we've got to remove it completely, but we have to bring awareness to alcohol consumption if we want to thrive on all levels. Mind, body, emotionally, all of the things. Like, the alcohol awareness, it's got to be part of the conversation. Number 3, so we're talking about how to actually apply this different approach. We want to shift from relying on motivation to just having simple structure. So when we're relying on motivation, that's another form of all or nothing. Some weeks, gung-ho, happy days, like we've got nothing planned, so we can focus on ourselves this week. So we're so motivated. We're wearing our new gym kit. We are meeting our friends at the spin class. We're eating well. We've got time to prep. But then what happens on the weeks when I'm travelling for work, I've got birthday parties, I've been given more work than I'm used to having on a typical week, and all of a sudden I feel as though I can't do any of the things because I can't, I'm not as motivated this week. You need structure. We have to have structure. And this is the first thing that I will do with all of my clients, is we just introduce a framework. Now, if you one-to-one, it's a framework that works specifically for you. So if you one-to-one, I will know what a typical week looks like. I will know where your time's being spent. I'll know where you're struggling most. I'll know where you want to get to. And we will figure out a structure that works for you. But what happens when you have a structure in place is, first of all, it removes overwhelm. It's more about rinse, repeat. I heard something the other day and it really stuck, and I'm going to share it. And it was, instead of striving to be perfect, just strive to get it done. That's it. Just get it done, even if it looks imperfect. That is what having a structure often looks and feels like. So I've gone to the gym this morning, and honestly, I was not feeling the motivation. And I was feeling I'm talking about this tiredness that sort of like kicked in a bit this week. And I was feeling as though I'm not fully recovered. And you know the way you just get in your own head. But I still went to the gym. It was never a question that I was going to flake. I like to have these conversations in my mind. Negative Nancy likes to pep up and have her 2 pence, but she's never going to get in the way of what my structure dictates, which is I am going to the gym today. It was always part of the plan. I got my kit out last night. I've organised it. It's in my diary as an appointment. It's happening. It's that is part of the structure. I also know where the rest days are going to be planned in. I also know what food is going to look like today. And I might feel like doing things a bit differently, and I'll entertain the notion in my mind of just kicking back and eating the big 2 rounds of jam on sourdough. But that's not what I'm going to eat. I'm just entertaining it for a moment. It's like a daydream. And so this is what structure will help you develop, is just that it's almost like discipline is like a muscle that we work and we train it. But if you've not got the structure and you're relying on motivation, then you will continue to dip in and dip out. So simple ways to get this started. If you're listening to this thinking, yeah, Nick, but I don't work with a coach, so help me, like, what does structure actually look like? So it looks like your non-negotiables. And if you're unclear what that needs to be, head to our Thriving Women community. I'm going to say inside of the welcome area, have a little play around. You're going to find the non-negotiables template. I think there's 15 to 20 options on there. Pick three or five. They should feel challenging but doable. So it might feel like a challenge to get 3 litres of water a day, but it's 100% doable. Okay, non-negotiable for the next 5 days. So when we talk about structure, it doesn't need to be from the offset every hour of your day is accounted for, but we do want to have our non-negotiables. We want to have these habits that we always anchor back to. So your 30 to 50 grams of protein in every meal, your bedtime routine, your habits around drinking water. Like, this gives you structure. So even if you go wildly off course, the following day, you're going to anchor back to these habits and non-negotiables because they are part of your structure. And ladies, it's going to take work. If you don't have structure in place right now, if you are winging it and you don't have non-negotiables, or you keep flaking on your non-negotiables because in your mind you feel like it's acceptable to let yourself down, let me tell you, that is the quickest way to eventually stall and go backwards. So figure out the non-negotiables and show up in the way that you said that you would until that becomes a framework that you pretty much live by week to week. And then the notion of a reset rather than guilt. This is a big one. I think, again, for us ladies who are at a certain age and we have got all of the things going on, and we don't want to make excuses, but I also think it's sometimes very important to validate that maybe one of the kids were off sick, or you had more of a stressful day than you intended, and then we don't follow up with all of the things. Maybe we miss the mark and we don't get the workout or whatever it is that we've missed. Instead of feeling guilty around it, instead of continuing to then self-sabotage and convincing ourselves that we are not cut out for this whole transformation, you've just got to offer yourself the opportunity to reset. Tomorrow, I'm going to come back stronger, more resilient. I've mentioned this on a podcast before, but I really like it, so I'm going to mention it again. I do this with my kids overnight. You know that tucking yourself in before bed. So ladies who find it really hard to struggle, ladies who struggle, what's up with me today? Can't get my words out. Ladies who struggle with negative self-talk, or you just know that you're particularly hard on yourself. One way to show yourself a little kindness, to build this, it's a relationship with self, whether we realise it or not. To build that more compassionate relationship with self is tuck yourself into bed overnight. So when hubby's turned over and you turn over and it's eyes shut and you're ready to go to sleep, you're just going to say in your mind, good night, Nick, love you. The love you part is, I think, really important. Instantly, it brings this wave of relief. And then you're going to reflect on the things that you're proud of from today. And it could be anything. It could be that you kept quiet when you felt like flipping your lid on the kids earlier. Or, you might be proud that you are giving yourself this grace when today did not go to plan. It can be anything. I do this with my girlies. So I will give them a kiss, good night. And I'll say, don't forget to tuck yourself in when mummy goes out the room, babe. And I will say to Penelope, don't forget, good night, Penelope, I love you. So I'll give her the reminder of what I want her to internalise. Because we know, as grown women, some of these little habits that we embedded as kids, they're still part of, we still revert back to them. And so that might be a nice way to help to reset at the end of an evening rather than to feel guilty all of the time. We can't keep wasting time feeling guilty for the things that we, like our shortcomings. It's a waste of our time and energy. And honestly, we're we're doing ourselves a massive disservice, ladies. Like, we are built for more. We are capable of way more than we realise. And this fear of things not working out, this fear of being judged, this fear of going backwards or not meeting our potential, or like the fear, the guilt, we've got to get it gone this year. And so offer yourself a reset. Every single day is an opportunity. I know it sounds a little cheesy and it's very much a meme, I think, on Instagram, or a quote. Every day is a new opportunity, but it really is. It's an opportunity to show up in the way that aligns with this higher standard, better version, new identity, whatever we want to call it. Okay, number 4, when it comes to applying this change of approach, is to shift from chasing the scale number to actually looking at the metrics that really equal progress, ladies. This is, oh my gosh, I am banging a drum on this one, because so many of us are hung up on the weight that we were when we got married, or the weight that we were before we had kids, or the weight that we were when we were in our 20s. I know we felt amazing at that time, but we also, if it's your wedding weight, you were also highly likely the most motivated that you will ever be in your life. You had so much going on that was going to distract you from overeating. So we talk about this emotional, like fat loss is an emotional problem. Well, emotions were probably in your favour at that moment in time. Potentially you were younger, and the motivation of the dress and the occasion is always going to spur us on to get that extra 10% or whatever it is. I was like about a stone lighter on my wedding day. Honestly, I think I would look ill if I dropped a whole stone in weight now. I don't know. I'm not willing to put it to the test. Not saying I've not got a couple of pounds to lose, but you know, we've got to think about it as a moment in time. That was 10 years ago, and that was my body, my hormonal makeup. That was what that number was for me at that moment in time. And that now is no longer what I'm chasing. So the progress markers that matter, the progress markers that I would be looking at, first and foremost, your energy. The first progress marker. If you know that you are stuck in that cycle of low energy, low mood, cravings, not sleeping too well, you really want to do all of the things, but it always feels like an uphill battle. It never just feels like it comes with ease. First progress marker I want you to look at is your energy. And all of these things that we've spoken about, so eating better is going to improve your energy, prioritising sleep is going to improve your energy, focusing on strength over HIIT is going to improve your energy, more muscle on the body, focusing on protein at every meal, making sure that you get enough general movement a day is, again, going to make sure that we are training and exercising that certain energy system that is going to play into positively boosting your energy. This is a massive marker of progress. And I have clients who check in with me and they've lost weight on the scales and they don't even mention that because they cannot wait to share how energized they feel. And it's like unlocking a new level on a game. You know, like when you're on Mario or Sonic or whatever. Absolutely showing my age. Sega Mega Drive. And you get to a new level and all of a sudden like your player is battery charged. Like that's how I can only describe it as feeling. Until you felt that and experienced it, it's really hard for me to quantify it, but that is one of the biggest progress markers. Strength, tracking your lifts in the gym, tracking what weight you're lifting, working towards lifting that heavier weight, getting that extra rep, like building strength. So again, I know I'm always using my clients' anecdotes in these podcasts, but I had a client check in this week and she said, massive win, carried both kids up the stairs on the back, which she said, I know that sounds daft, but I physically couldn't do that 6 months ago. Like my knees and joints, and I would have been like puffed trying to lift one of them up the stairs. And I lifted both and I just went up the stairs and it wasn't like a big milestone. It just happened. And then afterwards I was like, wow, I have really built some strength. And so it's reflecting on things like that. Like think about how that impacts the time you spend with your kids, the experiences that you have with them, how they view you as strong mummy, but also in terms of health and energy and self-esteem and self-confidence to build strength as a woman. You'll know when you get that first press up or you get that first squat on a heavier weight or that first pull up or that first kilometre, even whatever it is that you are working towards, it feels so much more rewarding than a scale weight ever will. And it's not to say that the scale weight doesn't matter if you've got a fat loss goal. We want to drive that number down. We know that. But if we focus on that and we hyper-focus on that, then we leave ourselves too vulnerable to these peaks and troughs in emotions. And we know that the emotions are driving the eating habits and behaviours. So we want to focus on the strength, the energy, the quality of your sleep. If I speak about, like, if I've got someone comes into my coaching one-to-one client, that's where she's struggling, then that's the thing that I want you to quantify in next check-in. I want to know. I don't want you to run out and buy a Whoop or an Oura Ring, but I want to know how energized you feel when you wake. I want to know if we are reducing these night wakings. I want to know if we're reducing this anxious feeling that you've got when you wake up and you can't put your finger on what it is. And the minute that you check in, you're like, okay, Nick, I'm sleeping great. I'm getting off to sleep without overthinking. I'm not waking up as much in the night. I feel energized when I get up in the morning. Perfect. Big progress. How this is going to knock on to everything else is it's tenfold. And your waistline's a big one. Women of a certain age, we've spoken about this on previous podcasts. We get to a certain age, we start to store weight, mostly in part to this elevation of our cortisol. We start to store body fat around our middle. It's just part of what the body will do for efficiency. It's not really very efficient for us ladies. We don't want our waistline to increase, but hey ho, once we can understand it, then we know how to manage it. So if you are noticing that your jeans are starting to fit a bit looser, your wear clothes are feeling a bit looser, or you're taking a waist inch measurement, that is I would say that's such an impactful progress marker and health marker. We don't want to be carrying excess body fat around our internal organs and around our middle. So looking at that reduction in your waistline, again, client, and I think I may have shared this on social media because she'd sent me a message to go with a photograph of the jeans that look 2 sizes too big. Like, there's just no way. They don't even stay up. She was like, mind blown. My weight has barely changed, Nick. These jeans are hanging off me like I can't even wear them, but my weight's barely shifted. Now, bear in mind, when we started working together, the scales came down. When we very first started working together, the goal was fat loss. So we got to work on that. We saw this big shift on the scales as a byproduct of all of the healthy habits that we plugged in. But then we've moved into this strength-focused phase. And so her body's starting to change. Her aesthetic, her waistline has come right in. She's tightening up. We know that muscle takes up less room in the body than fat. So we hear about how it weighs more than body fat, but it actually just takes up less room. So if you're watching on YouTube, 5 pounds of fat, 5 pounds of muscle, like, which is smaller? So you can weigh the same but look smaller when you're in this muscle building phase. And she knew this because she's heard me talk about it, and I will always speak my clients through the process and what to expect, because it's important to understand what to expect. But she was like, Nick, mind blown. Look at the jeans. Look at the scales. Like, how? I know that that's what we would expect him, but I can't get my head around it. But looking at paying attention to your waistline, ladies, is a much more accurate way to track your progress than simply relying on scale weight and freaking out over the scale. So I will wrap up this week's episode with the reminder. Hopefully that was helpful. A lot of the time, a lot of the women that I'm speaking to, you don't need to push harder. Do we need to be more disciplined in what matters most? Yeah. Like, I'm not going to say you don't need more discipline. Maybe you do need more discipline in showing up for yourself. It's this whole struggle, isn't it, around not feeling comfortable being selfish, although we know that that's going to serve the greater good. So do we need more discipline when it comes to showing up for ourselves? Yeah, I would say so. But do we need to push harder? Do we need to squeeze more out of our day, go to bed later, wake up earlier, eat less? Do we need to be working out for longer? And no, we need a smarter approach. So if this has resonated and some of it's been penny drop, I want you to save this episode. Save it and re-listen. Same with everything else. You can't just listen once and then go back to the day-to-day. We need to listen. We need this to form a part of our subconscious way of thinking, and then we need to plug it in. And if you know somebody else who's going to benefit from listening to this, then please share the episode. Or if you've really enjoyed listening to this week's, I know that I personally really appreciate any shares on social media, because it helps to get more eyeballs on the podcast and to grow my little passion project, which is this podcast. I'm going to wrap it up. I will see most of you inside of Thriving Women this week. To my clients, I will look forward to catching up with you all. And to everybody else, thank you so much for listening, and I will catch you all on next week's episode.